This morning we're going to be talking about undercover agents of grace, something that is not unfamiliar to this congregation. And when we talk about what it means to serve without looking for recognition, I have to recognize the fact that our human nature wants to be recognized for things that we are proud of, for better or worse. Have you been in a situation where you've done something you're really proud of and you did not get recognized for it? And sometimes we're okay with that. But if we're honest, there are times that we're proud of something and we hope someone would notice, right? Or maybe even worse, have you ever been in a situation where you've done something that you're proud of and somebody else got recognized for what you did? That hurts, right? I remember when I was getting into youth ministry, when we first moved to Texas in 2010. And we did this really cool intergenerational ministry event, and I wrote an article about it. And I was really proud of this article, and it got published in a couple different places online, and then it started to make the rounds, and I was like, this is so cool. I was really proud of this. And there was a particular religious newspaper who reached out, and the editor of the newspaper asked if she could publish the article in the newspaper. I said, yes, by all means. I had given permission to a couple different outlets as well. And so I was excited to get the newspaper in hand. It was one that our church subscribed to, and I got the newspaper and I looked at it. I know she had changed the title of the article. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, let me keep reading. Oh, wait, it doesn't say by Josh Fitzpatrick. It says by her name. And then the rest of the article was not my article. It was her article using my article as if she had interviewed me, which never took place. And I remember thinking, it didn't matter how many different places it got published and how proud of it I was. That kind of took the wind out of the sails in that moment. Have you been there before where you're proud of something, but somebody else gets credit or steals the credit or takes the credit for it? That's our human nature. Okay, maybe you've experienced the opposite. Maybe you've done something you didn't expect any credit for, and somebody thanked you for it. A genuine, sincere thank you. I remember when I was coaching the Rainbow Unicorns, 5-year-old girls soccer team that Juliet played on. I mean, it was a blast. And I just did it out of the goodness of my heart because it was just a fun thing to do. And I remember at the end of that season getting a thank you card that I didn't expect. And it was hand signed by all these 5-year-olds. And more than many thanks that I've received, that one just stuck with me because it wasn't expected. And yet it was so just genuine and pure. You know, sometimes we do things and we expect to get recognized. Other times we do things and we don't need the recognition. And sometimes there's things we do and we'd like the recognition, but it never comes along. That's just the nature of being a human being who exists in a world with other people. Now, there's a story in Scripture this morning that I'm going to go back to. It's a familiar story, but it has some interesting dynamics because of the people who get recognized and the people who do not. So this is the story of Moses. This is in Exodus chapter 2, verses 5 through 10. Hear the word of the Lord this morning. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. While her attendants walked beside the river, she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid to bring it. Do you remember who's in this basket? Moses. When she opened it, she saw the child. He was crying, and she took pity on him. This must be one of the Hebrews' children, she said. Then his sister, Moses' sister, said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you? Pharaoh's daughter said to her, yes. So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages. And so the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and she took him as her son. She named him Moses, because, she said, I drew him out of the water. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Now, this is a story that many of us are familiar with. It's one of the first ones, if you've been to Sunday school as a child, that you see on the flannel graph or the whiteboard or in video form. It's one that has also spread through pop culture with Disney's version of the Prince of Egypt. It's a story that's so familiar that sometimes we neglect to see all of the characters involved. As you recall, a new Pharaoh had come into power. This is what we read in chapter 1. The Pharaoh is the leader over all of Egypt. Now, at that time in Egypt, the Hebrew people, the people of God, were enslaved. The new Pharaoh began to get threatened that they were growing in numbers. And so he started to think, what can I do to keep them at bay? So the first thing he does is he starts to increase their workload. But what happens? They grow even more numerous. So then he connects with these two Hebrew midwives and says, look, I cannot have the Hebrew people continue to grow more and more numerous. When babies are born, and the midwives would help deliver those babies, if it's a boy, you need to eliminate him. If it's a girl, you can let it live. So Pharaoh had this plan. The problem was those midwives feared God more than they feared Pharaoh. So they allow all the babies to live. And Pharaoh goes to them and says, what are you doing? All these babies are living. I told you what to do. It's an order from the Pharaoh. And they say, these Hebrew wives, these Hebrew mothers, they're too strong. Their babies are already there before we even get a chance to get there to help them, and it's already too late. We didn't have a chance to do anything different. And Pharaoh goes along with it and just says, well, okay, well then, even after they're born, this is plan C, if you will, A, B, and C. If it's a boy and he is already born, throw him into the river. I mean, this is brutal stuff. But the Pharaoh did not want the Hebrew people to expand. So as we get into chapter 2, we're introduced to Moses' mother. And for the first 3 months of Moses' life, Moses' mother tries to hide Moses. She finally gets to a point where she realizes that his life is in danger. And really the only chance she has is to put Moses in a basket and float him down the Nile River. Now, again, it's a familiar story, but it really is a fascinating story. So here's Moses floating down the river. Pharaoh's daughter is there at the river to bathe, sees the basket, picks it up. And who sees what happens? Moses' sister, Miriam. And she's a genius. She says to Pharaoh's daughter, who had picked up the basket, hey, I have an idea. What if you allow me to find a Hebrew woman to nurse that baby until he's old enough, and then we will return him to you to be your own son? Pharaoh's daughter agrees. Who does Miriam find to nurse baby Moses? His own mother, Jochebed. I mean, what a cool story. And eventually she keeps to her word, returns Moses to Pharaoh's daughter, and Moses is raised in the Egyptian courts as kind of this hybrid royalty, but also has his Hebrew roots. Really, really fascinating. And so we have several different characters within this story. Obviously, the one we know the most is Moses. This is Moses' story, right? But what about everyone else who's involved, particularly the one that remains nameless? The daughter of Pharaoh. She's not given a name. Now, there's probably good motivation in that this was a Hebrew story told to a Hebrew audience, and so as it was told over and over, there was probably not much motivation to name the enemy. But in this case, even the enemy plays a significant role in moving the story forward. And so all we know of her is that it's Pharaoh's daughter. Can you imagine what it must have been like to be Pharaoh's daughter, seeing this basket, picking it out of the river, knowing exactly what your own father had ordered of all male Hebrew babies? What does she do? With tears, she shows compassion, going against the order of her own dad, picks the baby up, and then interacts with Miriam with a plan to save his life. Think about the courage that must have taken. And yet, we still don't know her name. Pharaoh's daughter is all we know. We see this all throughout Scripture. That sometimes the most unexpected people in the most unexpected circumstances play extremely significant roles in moving God's story forward. I'd like to think that maybe several years later, people were telling this story and she heard them and was like, that was me. I'm the person in trying to get the credit or whatnot, but we don't know her name. And I think this sets an example of the way that God likes to operate still in this world today. Through the unexpected people, in unexpected circumstances, making significant contributions to what God is doing in the world. Without the daughter of Pharaoh, there would be no Moses. Would the story move on? Yes, in some form or fashion, because God is in control, but without the daughter of Pharaoh, feeling compassion, defying the orders of her own father, and walking forward with courage, there would be no story of Moses as we know it today. Now, I also want to highlight some of those other players. We have 2 midwives. They are both named in this book, Shiphrah and Puah. Raise your hand if you actually knew that. Bible trivia, anyone? Of course. Okay, we have a couple who had those down. I had to look. Shiphrah and Puah, the 2 midwives. Think about their circumstance. Again, the Pharaoh of Egypt comes to you and gives you an order. And they think of this really clever excuse to get away with it, but they're risking their own lives to defy the order of Pharaoh. But they kept doing what they were doing because they knew it was right, even if it meant risking their lives. Okay, and then think about Moses' mom, Jochebed. I mean, here she is knowing the threat that is coming from the Pharaoh of Egypt, killing all the baby boys who are Hebrew. And she tries to hide them at first, but then gets to a point where she's so desperate enough that she places him in a basket and lets him go in faith, not knowing what's going to happen next. What courage that must have taken. I can't even imagine. And then you have Miriam, Moses' sister. I mean, talk about someone who gets overlooked often. Miriam comes up with this genius plan, goes to Pharaoh's daughter and says, hey, how about we let one of the Hebrew moms nurse this baby? All along knowing exactly the mother she was going to bring her to. So not only does Moses' own mom get to raise him, but it says she gets paid to raise her own son. I mean, this is incredible. And I look back at this story, it brings me back to this book that I remember buying Emily when she was 2. It was called My First Book of Girl Power. And it had, every page was a different female superhero. It was like Batwoman and Hawkgirl and Katana, and they had Supergirl. And I remember thinking at the time, like, why have I never seen a book like this before? And she loved it. And the reality is we already have a book of superwomen. It's here. It just gets overshadowed by the men we know so well. Here we have Shiphrah, Puah, Jochebed, Miriam, and the daughter of Pharaoh. Talk about super women without any of their contributions to the story. I wonder what God's story would have looked like. It would have looked different. So I want to make 3 points as we talk about this morning. The first point is this, that more often than not, when God invites us to contribute to what God is doing in the world, we may not get recognized for that contribution. Our name might not make a book that lasts for centuries, and that's okay. This church gets that. I cannot tell you how proud I am to serve a congregation of people who aren't looking for recognition. And I, as your pastor, do not thank you enough. And so I'm going to do something a little bit different this morning. And I want to take some time. And I want to thank some of you. And here's the risk. I'm going to miss some because there's so many. So I'm going to invite you, when I get done just recognizing a handful, to raise your hand and add to the list. These are people in our congregation who serve selflessly to do the work of God in our midst on a regular basis. Some of them as church staff members get paid for it. Let me just say, very minimally, because we are a small church. But the majority of our church does it out of the goodness of their heart. I've told you in the past, Dennis Wallard decorates our altar every Saturday. Martha Foreman often purchases flowers to supplement the flowers that Dennis puts up here on a weekly basis. I never have to worry about what this looks like because it is already set every Saturday, faithfully. I think about the Ezels and Domains, who are part of our, what do we call them, y'all? The bag crew, the bag brigade. When we collect our bags on a monthly basis for UCO, someone has to deliver them. You know who delivers them faithfully? This crew right here. Have you ever had your name on a sign that says, "Thank you to our crew"? No. But I want you to know how much we appreciate that. I look around and I think I see Sandy. Sandy Bixler is our church treasurer. You have no idea how many hours she spends in that office with our accounting software, making sure that everything is reconciled, making sure that things are going into the right spot. It's a shame that sometimes the only time we talk to our church treasurer is when we notice that a number is out of place. And so we call her and say, "Hey, I think you got this wrong." For every number out of place, there are 1,000 transactions that she has nailed because she's dedicated to the role. Now, in partnership with Sandy is Paula Prejean, our finance secretary. Paula goes over our giving every week as gifts come in and makes sure that everybody's gift is accounted for in our online database. She has to manually put those in week after week. We have a counting team, Marcia Harris, Cindy Allen, Maureen Schrim, who join Paula every Sunday after church when we get to go eat and have fun. You know where they go? To the finance office to count the money. Because we have protocols in place where you can't do it by yourself. So there's always at least 2 people in there. We make sure that every penny is accounted for. And it's actually kind of a fun mystery sometimes. When we're like 10 cents off, we're trying to figure out, where did that 10 cents come from? So we make fun of it. We make fun out of it, not make fun of it. But the selfless hours that go into those positions are so appreciated. I think of our yard dogs. Raise your hand if you're on our yard dog team. Okay, so Keith Fournier and Thomas Moody and Danny DeBose and Alan Prejean. I know Gerald Huval, Pastor Wayne. Mark, you've contributed in the past on a regular basis. We take for granted that we get to come to church and the yard looks like that. We don't pay for that. That's a blessing to this church. All volunteer, this huge property gets taken care of. That is unsung heroes. I think of Tim LaFosse and I think of Stephen Trahan and Alan Prejean and Don Wright and the rest of our facilities management team and guys who come in here and fix toilets or install things. Okay, here's a very practical example. The other day, I was telling Liam about going to a leadership board meeting, and I was explaining to him what we do in that meeting and how we make certain decisions. And Liam said, "Hey, you know, the sink in the men's bathroom, it always sprays me because it has like that thing in it that goes like this and the pressure." So I brought that up in leadership board meeting. I don't even know who did it. But later that week, I turned on the sink in the men's bathroom and it was a straight flow. But unsung heroes. Unsung heroes. I mean, time and time again. Wayne Prejean leads our United Methodist men. He doesn't get paid for that. He loves it. He loves it. Not only does he do that here, but he attends things at the conference level and goes to all these different things that we are even unaware of. Zoom calls, Bible studies. Unsung hero out of the goodness of his heart. Audrey Dunbar serves on our congregational care team. Every week, she picks up the phone and calls our homebound members, goes down the list, so that when we meet as a congregational care team, we have even more context on how people are doing. The Millers, Marvin and Patsy, angels in flesh. And I say that because when you look at them, they're going to say, no, not us, not us. That's the number one sign that they are angels in flesh. You have no idea how many people Marvin and Patsy visit on a regular basis, at home, in the hospital. If they're not visiting, they're on the phone. Marvin doing our communion, at-home communion team. He's got this spreadsheet doing the communion services at Evangeline Oaks, week after week, month after month. You guys are so appreciated. We have Don and Kimmy who deliver bread. You might not even know this, that when somebody visits our church, they get a fresh loaf of bread. Do you know who cooks that bread? Marcia Harris's husband, George. Do you know who cooks the bread on communion Sundays that we have? Marcia Harris's husband, George. Marcia's here every Sunday morning setting up the communion without anybody knowing. Out of the goodness of her heart. We had the bishop the other day. I told her on Saturday, oh, by the way, the bishop wants communion tomorrow. She says, I'm on it. How many loaves do you need? You know what's also cool? You may have read my column this week about food allergies in our family. Marcia has worked with George so that he can make that bread without milk and eggs. So Liam can have it. That's church family. Unsung heroes. Goodness of your heart. That's what this family is made up of. So many people who go to work day in and day out to strengthen this church without looking for recognition. I cannot thank this family enough. Okay, here's your chance. I know I've left people out. Raise your hand if you can think of somebody. I'm going to go again. Cindy Allen, teaching every Sunday morning. She has to prepare her lessons. It is not no prep Bible study where I get to cheat. She prepares her lessons. And I'm so appreciative. Ann Fournier, leading our women's ministry. Our women's ministry for the past year had been kind of a void. We had been doing the women's fellowship, and Martha Foreman has been volunteering for that and doing awesome. But the idea of a more robust women's fellowship with different offerings had been a void in our ministry team structure. And Fournier said, I'll do it. I said, thank you. Thank you. Dana Mouton. The reason these candles are lit every Sunday is because either Dana does it or she's taught someone younger to do it instead. If that is a job that can just be easily overlooked. Dana, I'm so appreciative that you're so faithful to that task. Benjamin Bixler, Benjamin. Not only does Ben run the slides, but Benjamin's probably here at our church more than maybe anybody else, maybe other than Alan Prejean. If they had a competition, it'd be close. Benjamin, you are here often by yourself, and no one even knows what you're doing. But we know that you're cleaning, and that seems like a task that is easy to get forgotten. You know how pleasant it would be to worship in a dirty church? Thank you, Benjamin. Yes, Rini. Jackie DeBose. Say more.
She is our liaison with the Methodist Children's Home, and she works in all kinds of blanket ministry and all kinds of.
If you want to get pumped up on serving other people, speak with Jackie DeBose.
The salsa sales last Sunday was phenomenal.
Look at this.
Courtney was so blown away. She couldn't believe a small church.
Awesome.
And Miss D has been taking orders from friends, co-workers. I mean, I have another delivery coming in this week. Anybody wants any? There's forms out front.
Okay, speaking of Miss D, Miss D's in the nursery right now doing exactly what we're talking about. Alan. Friday mornings, every Friday morning, the men show up for prayer breakfast. That's an all hands on deck. Different guys cooking, different guys praying. Do they look for recognition? No. Stephen. Kimmy. Shirley. Thank you. Our entire kitchen crew, month after month, planning, preparing. Isla, all over the church. She's not here this morning because she's caring for her husband who just had surgery, but actually she might be in the running. Between Benjamin, Alan, and Isla at our church, just doing things. Kimmy and Shirley with the kitchen. Thank you. The choir. Yes. How much do they pay you to be in the choir? Nothing. No. Walt wants a raise. We'll double your pay. But for real, like that just seems like that is giving their time every Thursday evening. Yes, Benjamin. That's right. Sandy does the bulletin boards. That's right. So if you don't know, and you see a bulletin board freshly decorated, oh, like a magical church fairy did that or something. No, somebody actually did that. Thank you, Sandy. Julie. Yes. Yes. Renee and Wayne. Let me tell you something about me being here at this church. On my first week here, I went to lunch with Wayne in particular and sat down, and he made the list of everything that he was doing at that point. And I said one of my goals was to begin to offload some of these things. The beauty of what has happened in this past year, in particular with our different ministry teams, is we've been able to offload so many of those things. Here's the thing. If you create space for someone like a person like Wayne with a servant's heart, that just means he gets to pick up other things. You two have set such an example of selfless service, never looking for recognition. Who else? Audrey. Barbara Marshall, playing piano. Now, let me tell you something about Barbara. She's really, really good. I don't have to tell you that. Barbara does not just show up on Sundays and play like that. Although she probably could, Barbara is very serious about rehearsing. And so when you hear a prelude or you hear an offertory, she has rehearsed that at home, even with like a broken foot. And even with, I mean, for real, that's such a gift to Northwood. The bell choirs, children and adults who are here 9 a.m.s practicing. Think we'll get to hear y'all next week, right? No, in a couple weeks? Maybe next week. Patsy. Kelly Gilbo. Okay, here's a perfect example. Kelly Gilbo is our administrative assistant. Kelly's husband, Shane, has leukemia, and he's been dealing with it, and it's gone away. They're in the middle of getting some test results right now, so we haven't seen her physically in person, but talk about somebody who is working behind the scenes. The reason we have PowerPoint and bulletins and announcements and Facebook presence and all of these different things is because Kelly is working. Now, when we hired Kelly about maybe 6 to 8 months ago, we said, here are your hours and here's your pay. That has not held her back from saying, I want to make sure it's done at this level. And what about this idea? She is so selfless and has genuinely taken our church to the next level because of the contributions she's made as our administrative assistant. Look, we could go on and on and on. Here's the other point that Renee made the other day when we were in our stewardship campaign, talking about our contributions to the church. The fact that you are sitting here this morning, whether you have a task or a role in our church at all, that is a gift that you selflessly give to our church family. You are a part of this family. You are known and loved. And without you, the family would be different. So the first point I want to make, and I'll make the other two really quickly, is that sometimes God uses unexpected people in unexpected circumstances that go unnamed in very significant ways. You are appreciated. In fact, I'm not even going to go with my other 2 points. I'm just going to land it there. Just like Pharaoh's daughter, who is not named in Scripture, know that God sees you and that God will use you in the good work that God is doing in this world. Well, I appreciate the sentiment. Aww. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. It's easy. It's easy to be inspired and motivated to do the things we do when you're surrounded by other people who do it, right? this church has a gift in doing things without recognition, we would not be who we are. Kathy, thank you for directing our children's bell choir. I mean, I could go on. And again, the risk of this is not naming someone here this morning. And I recognize that I am missing people. Just know that your contributions are seen and appreciated, if by no one else, by the one who created you and calls you into that role. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me pray this morning. God, I thank you that you use undercover agents of grace. Would you surround our hearts with affirmation that comes directly from you, that reminds us of the value that you place on us and the work that we do for your kingdom. Would you continue to show us how to selflessly serve and selflessly love each other, that nothing in this church would be about us or for our glory or for my ministry, but that everything we do would be a gift to you, singing hallelujah as we give you thanks with our words